Hi everyone! So I'm excited to go through the Epic React app review of the Bookshelf app, build an Epic React app. This is going to be awesome. So if you're new here, I'm doing a series of videos, live streams, just showing a review of each one of the workshops that's included in EpicReact.Dev. And it's pretty awesome and epic, and I'm excited to go through this one in particular because it is actually 4 workshops in one. So it's very big. And yeah, lots of really cool content. And this is one that differs from all of the other ones in the fact that it is very rubber meets the road. It's a real world application. There are some subtle things that are in place just to make it workshopable, but for the most part, it's like a real legit application that that you would work on every day. So I think that you're really going to enjoy going through this one. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got here. So also, I am going to answer any questions that you have, so feel free to join our Discord and go to the Epic React Livestream questions if you want to ask any questions and stuff that I can answer after I go through the review. So yeah, and to join the Discord, you go to kcd.im/discord, and that will take you straight to the Discord. Answer a couple questions with the bot, and then you can join us, and it'll be great. And there was something else. Oh yeah, so Epic React is still on sale for 20% off. That sale ends tomorrow, so you do not want to miss this. It is an epic thing. So yeah, in 1 day and 13 hours. So not tomorrow, but like a little bit past tomorrow. So yeah, don't miss it for sure. I'm going to get so many emails from people saying, oh, I missed it. I was on vacation for a month or something, but we tried. So yeah, don't miss it. Friends don't let their friends miss it, so definitely take advantage of the sale while it's still ongoing. So, and another thing that I'll just mention while I'm here, so the full price of $5.99 is still worth it. It's still worthwhile. So if you miss the sale, it's fine because that is actually the price of one of these workshops. So I'm giving you 8 workshops. Actually, it's more like 11 because this is 4 workshops. So I'm giving you 11 workshops for the price of 1. So there's that. And you can just ask anybody on the Discord or even on Twitter. You can go to EpicReact.Dev tweets and get reviews from people who have gone through the material and just totally love it, say it's worth every penny, all that. Yeah, if you're like, I don't know about this. And then we do a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you try it out and you're unhappy with it, then that's fine. We will give your money back. No questions or whatever. So anyway, with that all done, let's talk about this last of the workshops. Now tomorrow I am going to talk about the expert interviews, and that'll be fun. But yeah, today we're talking about build an Epic React app. So with all of the workshops, the material is completely open source. And that's important so that we can reach those of you who just really can't afford to participate in the actual videos and everything. Yeah, so that's why I open source all of this stuff. And yeah, it has basically the same setup as everything else, except that yeah, there are actually some pretty significant differences from this versus all the others. So the like React Fundamentals and React Suspense, all of the workshops have this same app where you work through, you have an exercise description on the left, and then the exercise and everything on like the output code on the right, and you just work through each one like that, and it works out quite nicely for the isolated example. And then we also have the testing React apps, which is different from all of those because you're mostly spending time in the terminal on this one. But this one is different from all, like the most different, because it's actually a real application that you're working in. And I want to give you as close an experience as possible to working in a real application. But it's a little bit difficult to do that and also have exercises that are sensible to work through. And so the structure of the workshop is actually fairly similar as far as like, here, let me introduce you to the problem, and then you can go through and work on the solution, and then you can watch me work through the solution. So that structure is the same, but the way that we structure the files is different, because now we can't just have, here's the exercise and here's the final version and whatever, like in those directories. We just have to structure the files a little bit differently to make it like a real application. Yeah, let me see. I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and then we have this node go command to help you work through all of the exercises as well. So I can show you all about that here as we work through some of this stuff. So I just noticed, will there be a slightly different rocket icon next to your name once you finish the ER? That would be kind of cool. I wish that were possible. Leon, I'm not sure how to say your name. You can correct me, I'm sorry. Yeah, because there's only one rocket emoji, but that would be really cool. I am thinking about maybe making a page that lists all the people who finished the whole workshop, like all of the workshops. That would be pretty cool, pretty epic. So maybe, I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening with that. So here's what's covered, all that. And each one of these is going to be a various number of videos. And let's just go through each one of these one by one. So I've got everything set up already, and I can run node go, and this will list all of the branches. So with the other workshops, you've got individual files, and that each one of those files is an exercise. With this one, we're iteratively building this application, and so we can't just have like individual files. So we have branches, and each branch has instructions and certain things that you're going to be, or like different files that you're going to be working in. So here we go to 01, that's our first exercise, and that shows you how to bootstrap a React application. And so here, if we go to instructions.md, you pretty much just leave this open for all of these and just read through these instructions before you get working on the actual workshop exercises. So I give you some background information, I give you an exercise. You can take a look at the production version of things so you can see, okay, so here's what the exercise looks like, totally blank. That's what it looks like when you get started. And here's what the final version looks like. And okay, so I need to make this. I need to go from this to that. That's basically how that, that's where the value in having these production deploys goes. And we actually have production deploys for the extra credits as well. So you can see, oh, okay, so with the extra credit, now I've got a login thing here. And oh, now with this extra credit too, now that login actually has a form in it. And so you can kind of see what things are how things are supposed to work in each one of these as you're working through things. And if I refresh here now, I'm where I should be with this extra credit. So, whoa, okay, there we go. And actually, as you're working through these and as you say node go, it's best if you close down the server and then start it up again. Whoop. Because as awesome as Webpack is, it sometimes doesn't quite follow along with you as you're working through these and changing so many files all at once. Anyway, so with Bootstrap, we talk about how to get your application rendered to the page, so like get something rendered. And so the way that this works is each one of these is going to list the files that you're going to be working in, including the extra credits that list the files that you're going to be working in. And for this first one, it's actually just one file. And so here, if we copy that, paste that in here, you'll notice we actually have one index.js file, and all that's doing is it's doing a couple exports. So by default, like in the branch itself, this is the way that the file looks. When you run node go, it actually updates this file to just be all of the exercises so that you're just ready to rock and roll. The reason that we do this is so that we can, like I said, it's a little bit of a challenge to give you a real world application type of feel and also give you actual exercises that you can work through. And so whereas with the other workshops, you had a folder that had all the exercises and then a folder that had all the final versions, with the build a React app, we have the file that is what you import all over the place, but that just re-exports from the final version and the exercise. And then when you run node go, it just updates the imports in all of these exercise files. So you spend all of your time in just the exercise files, and then you can reference the final and the extra credits as you're working through things if you need to. So from here, like once you understand that, then working through this workshop should be just like any of the other workshops that you've done, because you have coded the koala bear. Hi there, I'm here. I'm ready to help you be an awesome programmer and stuff. and Marty the Money Bag, and all the other stuff in here. You also have tests in here. They aren't like comprehensive necessarily, but they do cover, and maybe they could be, but they should help you and guide you as you work through this. So you can run this test, and it will run in watch mode, and everything will work great. And it will tell you that, yes, it failed. You need to actually build something so that it actually works. So you can use the test to kind of help guide you as you work through it, in addition to actually running the app and following along with the exercises. So I wanted to bring all that up as part of this review. This is all included. If you didn't follow that, all of this is included in the Build an Epic React App welcome, as well as the walkthrough of the project setup. I explain how all of that works. So if as you're getting started, you can make sure that you get an idea of, orient yourself, because this is a little bit of a unique situation. So with that all said, let's just continue going through these exercises so we can review the content that's covered here. So we do talk about bootstrapping your app, and we're building out this login form. And then we say node go, and we want to change exercise and go to the styles exercise. So then we talk about styling React components. And in this workshop, I show you how to use emotion for styling. I've used emotion for years, shipped really awesome applications with it, and I love it. It's awesome. And so I show you how to use emotion to style your React applications. You absolutely can't, if you don't agree with that or something, I just know this is why I'm saying all this, because I know lots of people are just dying inside because for some reason they hate CSS and JS. I sort of understand it, but I think it's ridiculous. Anyway, if you don't want to do that, you could skip this one, or even better, you could do this one, except use your favorite styling method. So if you wanted to use regular CSS, totally cool to do that. If you wanted to do Tailwind CSS, you're totally cool to do that too. But the exercises are all with emotion and emotion components. So that's actually one of the nice things about the Bookshelf app is that, and something that I expect people to do, is to take the exercises and expand beyond them, because you're in an application where you start having ideas of oh, I could do this and I could do that, and that would be interesting to see what that looks like. So yeah, here's where we start getting into a couple of different files and stuff, but the instructions kind of guide you into which files you want to go into. Here I give you some background on what emotion's all about too. And the CSS prop, which is what I use most of the time. I love the CSS prop. It's fantastic. And yeah, then for our exercise, we start out with this thing that doesn't look great. And then when we're all done with the first solution, it'll look a lot nicer. That's what styles do for you. Then we've got some extra credits here as well that you can dive into. Yeah, and we show a spinner component, so animations and stuff with the motion, keyframe animations, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that is styling. Let me just check really quick. This is such a big workshop. There's so much that I'll check every now and then for questions as we go. So do you discuss reusable components like Rollup versus Webpack? So Rollup and Webpack are bundlers. They build your code that has nothing to do with reusable components. But I'm guessing you're talking about making an open source library and using those tools to distribute them. And I don't talk about building a component library and distributing that on NPM or anything like that. But we do make a little component library within the application that we use throughout the application. So yeah, there's that. Okay, cool. So moving on to our data fetching exercise. So this is where we start making HTTP requests to make things actually legit. I give you a little bit of background information on window.fetch API, and then we build out our own client API. And so we have an API that is actually running locally. It actually runs within the browser. We're using MSW to mock out our API. And this is one of the things that makes it so that it's really easy to get this workshop up and running. You don't have to have, years ago I actually gave a workshop where you had to have MongoDB installed and you had to have a bunch of other things all lined up with the right node version and everything. And I made a ridiculously complicated script to validate that you had all those things installed and tell you which things you needed to update. And it was just, despite all of my best efforts, it was just a nightmare for everybody. Nobody liked it. And it was really difficult to make that work. And because this isn't a let me teach you how to set up Mongo or let me teach you how to set up Docker on your machine type of workshop, that's not what I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to teach you React. And so we don't have a real actual backend database, but everything that you're writing your React code, it will feel like you have a real actual database. I promise you, you feel like it's a real database. So and so that actually works out really nicely. So anyway, in this exercise, I show you how to interact with that database. It's kind of cool, actually. So I'll show you the exercise and the final. So here's the exercise. You got the search books, and then this one actually works. So you can say Lord. There we go. And we get a bunch of Lord of the Rings things back. And then in the future exercises, we actually start making post requests and saving data and stuff like that. So yeah, very good. Let me just check this question really quick. So Aaron is clarifying here, meant to discuss the choices between rollout versus Webpack. Right, okay. So I don't talk about bundling tools, and Jacob is in here talking about or answering this question, but I'll just answer as well. I don't talk about bundling tools or any tooling stuff, really. I'm hyper focused on EpicReact, and that's intentional. It's not because I don't think learning those tools isn't important, and not that it can't be useful or anything, but it's growing less relevant every day as we get more and more frameworks that are just like out-of-the-box work. So you have Next.js and you have Remix coming out. So you have really great frameworks that can manage all of that for you, so you can focus on the React stuff that I'm teaching you. So yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see. And then we talk about handling failed requests and using the use async hook, which you built. You actually built this hook in a previous workshop. So then we're going to use this hook in a real world setting, which I think you'll quite enjoy. So let's go on to the next one. Authentication. So authentication is basically one of those things that I don't recommend that anybody builds their own authentication solution unless they have a team that's dedicated to it, or they are a company that builds authentication. Now, there are some exceptions to that. There are some great open source libraries that you can use for managing authentication and stuff. But yeah, don't try to just go build your own. So with that in mind, I don't in this workshop, we don't prescribe a specific authentication provider to use or library for like the backend portion of the authentication. And because we're not doing any backend authentication either, I don't teach that portion of it. So what you're going to be interacting with is a authentication provider that I wrote that it simulates the type of API that you would experience with any type of authentication provider you would use. So this is like Auth0 or Firebase or whatever else, Netlify Identity. These all expose similar types of APIs, and so I built my own auth provider that interacts with our database, our simulated database to do authenticated requests. So if you wanted to test that out, you can go to the bookshelf.lol app right now, register for an account, and interact with the app, and you'll notice that like it has all of the typical types of experiences that you would expect from an application with authentication. And so because this is hyper focused on the React portion, I've already built that portion for you, and you use React to interact with that client library for the authentication. So that's what this exercise is all about. And yeah, so we talk about making authenticated HTTP requests. I give you some background on how the typical way to do that is. We're going to use the authorization bearer token mechanism for doing this using a JOT. This is a very common mechanism for doing authentication. And yeah, and then we talk about how to integrate that specifically with React. I give you a couple of resources to dive into deeper. And then, yeah, let's take a look at our exercise in our final version. So we're pretty much still like we've iteratively built this together, and now we actually want to make this login and registration work. So for the final version, you can say, I've done this before. So we've got ABC1 now. And so it actually does log in. There's a user token that you can use to make authenticated requests. You can take a look at your network tab, and we'll search for Lord right here. And if we look at our, oh, actually, I don't think this one's an authenticated request. Hold on. I feel like there's got to be an authenticated request in here somewhere. Anyway, I've done so much of this that I'm forgetting what content is covered. But we do make authenticated requests, and it's not just the login and registration requests. But yeah, so, and it may actually be in one of these extra credits. There's so much, I forget what it is. I find, sorry, I'm just checking out the comments here. Find myself reading and writing code more than watching videos with these workshops. Yes, that is absolutely true. You will spend a lot more time reading and writing code than watching videos, 100%. Yeah, okay, so we also talked about loading the user data on page load, and then using the use async hook that you built earlier, and then automatically logging out on a 401. So if they make a request, they get an unauthorized, then we'll just log them out so they can log in again. There are different approaches to that type of a situation, and this is the one that we take. And yeah, and then here we go, supporting posting data. I knew that we had something in here for that. So yeah, we're logged in, and we search for the books, and then posting of data. What is the posting data? I don't remember, but I remember I show you that. Sorry. And then, yeah, and then we do elaboration and feedback. So that one's actually pretty cool. We've got quite a few videos on that one, I think. Authentication, yeah, a bunch of stuff on there. So you'll enjoy that. And then, oh, one other thing I need to mention about Node Go. This will delete all of the changes that you made. So it'll just reset everything. So if you want to keep any of your changes or whatever, make sure you commit those before you do, and commit and push them. And yeah, I never really anticipated people wanting to keep their changes. Honestly, I'm still not sure why, but yeah, like if you want to, then you'll want to make sure that you commit those changes, because running Node Go will delete everything. And it has to do that, otherwise changing branches will not work, right? So anyway, we're gonna go to the extra credit or to the routing exercise. We're not even halfway through, folks. So there's a lot to this. So yeah, we talk about React Router, and it's amazing. I love React Router. It is the URL, like I say here, it's arguably one of the best features of the web. It's awesome. And so I give you a quick rundown of how to use React Router, and then I kind of boot you off into the exercise. This is very intentional. I've gotten complaints. Actually, I've always gotten complaints about this mechanism, and it normally comes from like where I say, here's some background, boom, here you go off to the exercise, and I'll be here if you need me later. And I get complaints about that approach, but it's always from people who just aren't used to actual learning and are more used to just watching a lecture and taking notes. One of those will actually teach you stuff, and the other one will not. And I'll let you guess which one I went for. So yes, you do just dive right in. I give you resources to go learn deeper if you need to. This one's actually quite interesting, from Tyler McGinnis. But yeah, so for this one, we do actual routing. We end up on the Discover page and stuff. It's kind of, kind of fun when like you get the finished version of that. And yeah, then we show you how to handle URL redirects using server. So this one's actually kind of interesting, because in our app, you'll notice if you go to bookshelf.lol, it actually redirects you to the list page. Now, this is actually a server-side redirect, because that's the only redirect that is correct. If you do client-side redirects, then your SEO will not be as good, and the browser will be confused, your caching won't be as good. So server-side redirects are what is recommended, and that's what I teach you how to do. It takes a little bit more work, but I show you how to do it in this workshop. And it makes it really interesting, because the home page is actually redirected to /list. So that actually complicates things a little bit, but it ends up working out for the better for everybody. So yeah, so I show you how to handle those URL redirects. It's kind of interesting. And then we use the useMatch hook to highlight the active nav item. So if we go to here, then you'll see that now the item over here is highlighted when you're on that page, which is kind of cool. And I think that's it. Yeah. So yeah, you get all the routing stuff that you need from that. And then let's go ahead and go to cache management. So cache management, this one is enormous. This is the biggest single exercise of the entire set of workshops. There are 24 videos here all about React Query and just the amazing thing that it is. It is so awesome. And unfortunately, version 3 is coming soon, and it is not really it doesn't make a big impact on your code, but it makes enough of an impact that I think I'm probably going to have to re-record all of these, which is such a pain. But it is great. React Query is fantastic. So, yeah, I'll just go through this. So I give you a bit of a rundown of what React Query is and how to use it. Give you a basic example of how to use React Query. And then I throw you into the exercise. So I show you what endpoints you're going to need to know about that our backend supports. And then you can dive into these files to start hitting those endpoints to get the data that you need. There's a lot of copy and paste for the solution. And then when we get into our extra credit, then we get rid of a ton of that copy and paste by making custom hooks to manage all of those endpoints that we're going to be interacting with. So all the CRUD operations and everything else. Which it occurs to me I probably should have, let's see, be CRUD. Well, and instead of delete, it's remove. So we can't call it CRUD, I guess. But anyway, you get all of the CRUD. You also get just like one-off requests. So yeah, everything that you need when you're working with basically like RESTful like things. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what about GraphQL? You can use GraphQL with React Query. It works out great. And if that's what your backend is written in, then awesome, go for it. If you want to switch this out for a GraphQL backend and use a GraphQL client library like Apollo or Urkel or something like that, you're more than welcome to do that. We're using React Query and I love it. It's awesome. So yeah, then we go and configure some things with React Query Provider, Query Config Provider, and that works out really nicely. You'll enjoy that. And handle mutation errors properly, so show you error handling, which is kind of nice. And yeah, loading spinner. This is where we actually integrate our custom use async hook. Or wait, was that? No, that's not this one. That must be, I think that's on the status buttons. So I think it's on the previous one, where we use async with React Queries, use mutate, and it's awesome. You'll like that. And then prefetching the book search query. So now that we have everything in place, React Query gives us all these little knobs that we can twist to optimize some things. I think you'll like that a lot. And adding books to the query cache. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of stuff in here. That one's a really cool optimization. Optimistic updates, very cool user experience improvement there. So fun stuff. I'm excited for you to go through that for sure. I just noticed a bunch of Discord stuff, so let me take a look at this. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So Arpan was just saying what I was talking about earlier, how you actually learn stuff if you try things first. Yes, this is true. So yeah, and React Query, 1 year old today. I thought that was maybe yesterday, but yeah, I guess maybe it's today. I can't remember when I saw that tweet, but yeah, happy birthday, React Query. Yeah, so just solid. I'm glad that people really like this this methodology of teaching. You'll actually learn stuff on EpicReact, which I think is cool. Yeah. So React Query is a cache manager. So state is stuff that's on the client that you're managing. Everything you get from the server, you're not managing that state. You're just referencing that as a cache. And so React Query is a cache manager, and it's awesome. I freaking love it. And you does React Query caching work in Lambdas? I mean, technically it should. I'm guessing you're saying like you're rendering your React app in a Lambda. Yeah, there's no reason it shouldn't be able to do that. You'll want to make sure that you clear the cache between each individual request. I know that Lambdas, like, they're supposed to just be like isolated little thing. It starts up, it runs your thing, and then it shuts down. That's actually not how it works. It's a lot more complicated than that. And so, yeah, you want to make sure that everything is completely isolated, and you have a totally separate cache for each request. Otherwise, you'll be in a world of hurt. But anyway, I mentioned Apollo query. Do I discuss the difference? I don't really discuss the difference. I come to you and I say, here's what we're going to use, and it's awesome. So that's as much as we get into. Whoa, I double-clicked that. Go away. Oh, man. I got to reshape it. There we go. Okay, great. Getting another message, but we'll continue. So that is cache management. It's awesome. You'll love it. And now we're going to go to context. Context is everything. There's a song about that. It's kind of fun. So context, so once we put everything inside of React Query, there's not a whole lot of global state left, but we do have authentication state that we're managing ourselves. We're not managing that with React Query, and so we're going to use our own context provider and everything for that. So it touches a lot of files, but the number of lines that it touches is not super great, except in just a couple of these first ones. So we're mostly moving things around. Before, we just rendered everything in one file, basically, or not one file, but one main component. Now we're just moving a bunch of stuff over to this provider. We create a use auth hook to make things really easy for managing that. We create an auth provider component to manage a bunch of stuff. That one's actually for the first exercise, the first part of the exercise. We just go. We do the minimal amount necessary for creating context provider. This is important for your learning as well. And then we move everything over to the auth provider afterward. Co-locating global providers, that one's a kind of a useful piece of all of this too. And then we have this app providers thing. I know a lot of people complain about the pyramid of doom or whatever with all the context providers that you're rendering. I have a couple thoughts about that. First of all, if you're using React Query, then you don't have as many of those. You don't need as many of those. Second of all, there's a difference between I don't like the way it looks and this is going to be hard to maintain. There's the pyramid of doom. That's like, we call that like the pyramid of callback doom, or I can't remember what we called it, but like when you just had a callback and then a callback and then a callback, and for managing asynchrony, that did lead to bugs, a lot of bugs. It was very hard to manage that. This does not lead to bugs. That is like really easy to manage. Even if you get some, if you get some of these things out of order, then like your linter will fail, your build will fail, prettier will fail. Like you can't mess this up very easily. So I'm not worried about that pyramid of providers. That doesn't matter to me. But it is nice to put it all in a single component, and we'll see that, see the benefits of doing that when we get into testing. So it's kind of fun. Okay, cool. So then we create a use client hook for making authenticated requests a lot easier. So that one's kind of fun. And yeah, and that's it for context. So that'll be a good one. And then compound components. So this is where we get into, oh, whoops. Let me close that, open it up again. There we go. Compound components is great. So for this one, we're actually going back to our login page, and we have this login component. I'll just show you really quick, just for the funs of it. So our unauthenticated app right here, we have this login form modal, and we're thinking about using this same sort of abstraction for different modals in the app or whatever. And it's pretty catered specifically for this use case, even though it has like a mess of props that are intended to make it generic and stuff. So rather than just adding a silly bunch more props, then we instead change the API completely and make it a lot more usable. So by the end of it, here, I'll just show you, just spoiler alert, the modal itself is way easier to use and way more powerful. So I think you'll like this one a lot. This is like the Advanced React Patterns workshop. It is, I think, arguably one of the ones that is hardest to transition into, okay, so how would I use this in a real world situation? And so this exercise is really great for that. Jacob is suggesting that I need extra sleep. I think I do. But I'm doing okay. We're fine. We had kind of a rough weekend. My son had a little bit of an accident with the shovel, and he has stitches now, and it's sad. And so it was an interesting weekend for us. Anyway, performance. So yeah, like we want to have good performance. So we talk about code splitting as our first part to improve the speed at which our code comes to the user. The application itself is actually relatively small, so it's there's not a whole lot to do with that portion of the performance story. But it's good to see how to apply the things that we learned from the performance workshop into an actual like real world application. So I show you how to do that. Yeah, and it's quite interesting. And then we get into prefetching the authenticated app, which is kind of interesting. Memoizing context to improve the performance of all consumers. Production monitoring, which is also quite interesting as well. So I think that you'll enjoy that. Oh yeah, and interaction tracing. This one's cool. I think you'll really like that because this one we actually do asynchronous interaction tracing. At the end of it, it looks awesome. I don't know. Let me just see really quick if I can show you this or not. So if I go profiler, we'll go here, and I think this is the one. And then stop. I can't remember. Yeah. So we clicked add to list. And so here's the commit where that started. And then here's the commit where that finished. And so you can see like the user's interaction for both of those things. Like there are things that may have happened between those two things that just kind of add noise. And so this will give you a lot more insight into, okay, so I did this thing. What are the commits that resulted as or that happened as a result of the user doing this thing? Yeah, it's really, really cool. I think you'll like that one a lot. And that data goes along with the production performance monitoring, which we get into with the profiler and stuff. It's pretty cool. Okay, cool. So then render as you fetch. So this is actually an additional performance enhancement where we preload the user's data as soon as the application comes along. Because this is a client-side application, we can't, we need to wait until we get all the code before we can go get the user's data. It doesn't just all come at once like it would if it were SSR. If it's SSR, then this optimization isn't totally necessary, although render as you fetch as a concept is definitely necessary. I'm just talking about the initial load of the application. And the cool thing is that Remix is going to make this so awesome, that the render as you fetch pattern. Yeah, it's going to be great. But I show you how to do this, and we don't even have to enable concurrent mode or anything to make that work. So yeah, it ends up working out really nicely. So yeah, I kind of give you the rundown of what's happening as our application loads, and I show you the desired outcome is to just move a couple of these things to be more in parallel. So yeah, that works nicely. Preload all the initial data to get things additionally fetched when they should be. So that one's really cool. I think you'll love that. Okay, then we get into testing. So we've done 3 workshops now. We're in our last workshop, and that is the testing portion. So now we're not spending quite as much time in the UI as we are in our terminal. And we start out with unit testing, just pure functions, some of the utilities, specifically the format date utility is where we start. But then we also test the API client, which is a little bit more complicated, and we are using MSW for this one. It's very cool. Yeah, and actually I can't remember how many videos we got for this unit testing one. Yeah, we've got a bunch. Most of them are the MSW related ones. So that one's pretty great. We talk about test failure cases and using setup tests so that it's easy to write more tests that interact with the backend. Really cool stuff. I think you'll really enjoy the unit test portion of this. And then testing hooks and components. So this, like, is that unit testing? I don't know. Everybody seems to think differently about how unit testing works, but I just call this testing hooks and components, and we've got like several of these to test. So I explained kind of what testing components is all about. Should be mostly review for folks who've already gone through the testing workshop. We talk about testing hooks, and then for the exercise, we have the reusable hook called use async, and then we have a couple of reusable components. We're going to test all of these things as part of this these exercises. The use async tests are pretty awesome, and I think that actually is most of our exercises is use async. The modal tests are also awesome, but not as they're not as comprehensive, or we don't need as many. It's not doing as much as it is, so it's very cool. And then, yeah, AHA testing. I talk about principles of testing and ways to simplify your tests for the use async hook. And yeah, and that's it for the hooks and components. And then we get into integration testing. And this one's awesome because it allows us to, for a small investment, get a huge return. And so this one is 100% in the source test directory, where we have the book screen. So you've got a bunch of tests that you can write in here. Ultimately, it ends up being a whole lot of tests that test just the book screen, but you get like so much covered by just testing that book screen. So it's really quite cool. Nice place to sit for the focus of your time. So there's a bunch of stuff on here. I think in the videos, we've got tons of videos for this one. So it's a really big one relative to the other exercises. You'll learn a lot. Yeah, that one's really cool. I think you'll enjoy that. And then finally, end-to-end testing. Hooray! So end-to-end testing is done with Cypress. So we didn't actually do end-to-end testing in the testing workshop. And so this will be your first exposure if you haven't done testing JavaScript or you haven't used Cypress before, your first exposure to Cypress. But it's like legit. I'll just show you. We'll just switch this to the final version. And we'll do test E to E. This will get everything started up. I think, is my app still running or not? I can't remember. But yeah, so we're going to open up Cypress. Yeah, there it is. Bum-ba-da-dum. Watch this. This is what you're going to write in this exercise. Watch this. Here it goes. Eventually, Cypress is slow. This is why I use Jest for most stuff. But yeah, so you write all of this. Isn't that great? That's fantastic. There's like, we cover so much. That's basically most of the application all right there. So yeah, have a good time writing all that stuff and learning how to just get a silly amount of confidence. So end-to-end tests are really more for the like typical user flow, mostly happy path stuff, and I cover the rest in integration stuff. So yeah, I think you'll like that a lot. There are a bunch of videos for that one. And then we have our outro, and this is like, you finished, you're totally done, congratulations, you're amazing. So enjoy that also. Okay, cool, so that's it. That is the 4 workshops that comprise the Build Epic React Apps workshop. And I'm just going to return to main. Here we go. And now I am totally happy to answer any questions that people may have, and then I'm going to jet. So what questions y'all have here? Let's see. Yeah, PPP comes with the interviews. You're going to love that. That's great. Okay. Yeah, Epic App is huge. So much stuff. Do I always use Create React App when starting a new project? So it really depends. Create React App is just a really great starting place. And the reason that I like it is because it takes care of all of the tooling and stuff that I don't want to worry about. And at the same time, it gives me all of the control. So I get the index.js. And I can't emphasize enough how valuable that is to me. Like Next.js and Gatsby both have to expose these fancy different APIs to allow you to wrap every page so that you can have shared providers. And that's just like the tip of it. There's more to it. So, oh yeah, can I stop this? It's kind of weird. People type messages. It's funny to watch myself do backflips. Yeah, so I don't really like that about those frameworks. And so Create React App just gives me a ton of control. I even have control over the router and everything. With the other ones, I feel like I'm having to work around the framework. Now, that said, the framework gives you a lot of value, and so I like that about those frameworks. And so I can't do server rendering with Create React App, which is a total bummer. And so if I needed that, I would do Next.js. But Remix is coming along, and it's going to be so awesome. I can't wait for Remix. And when I have Remix, then any real app that I'm going to build, I'm going to use Remix. I'm pretty positive. I haven't actually used it yet, so I'm not like 100% like totally on board with that yet, but I'm pretty positive that I'm going to be. So the one drawback to that is because it's licensed, like you have to have a license to run it locally. Of course, like when you deploy it, anybody can use it. But I won't be able to use it for my educational content. I will probably add something to EpicReact, like build a Remix app or something. But to be able to take that one, you'll have to have a license. You can watch the videos, I guess, but to work through the exercises, you'd have to have a license so you could run things locally, which is a shame, but I'm actually very interested to see how successful they are with that model, because I think it's a good model. So anyway, great. Is it recommended to run the tests when doing exercises? Yeah, I suggest that you have the tests running. For this workshop, the tests are more like everything's working. You didn't break anything. That's basically what it amounts to. Some of the workshops, I add some additional checks that you won't get to until you finish everything. So the workshop test can kind of help guide you to make until you have actually finished everything. For the other workshops, yeah, totally run the tests. Some of the tests are more helpful than others, and there are definitely some areas where they could be improved, and I welcome improvement. But yeah, in general, run the tests when you're doing the exercises. They can help. Yeah, I think that you'll learn a lot, Aaron. You're going to like this. Is Remix a React library? Yeah, so Remix is it's easiest to compare it to Next.js. So remix.run is what we're talking about here. And just take a look at the blog. Where's their blog? Where's their blog? It's on here somewhere. Blog. Maybe it's in blog.remix. Yeah, there we go. That's weird. I thought that they had a link, but anyway, check out their blog. They've got some really cool stuff in here. Sign up for their newsletter. It's awesome. I'm really looking forward to this. Do you think they will work harder on Remix because it's paid? Yes, absolutely. They each have families they need to support. They will definitely work more on Remix than anything else. They won't be distracted by trying to make money. They will be focused on making Remix awesome because it's how they make money. They won't be focused on making investors happy because that's how they make money. They're focused on Remix being as good as it can be for you, the developer, which is why I think that it's a really good idea. So yeah, thanks, Bala. I only wanted to disable the autoplay GIFs when I'm streaming. I wonder if there's a way to do that. I don't know. Anyway, so fun stuff. Thanks, everybody. This was a good time. Yeah, so let's just wrap this up. You can feel free to ask any last-minute questions, but I'll just wrap things up now. So we've still got two more live streams. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about the interviews, the expert interviews. Maybe I'll talk about the podcast tomorrow as well. And then we'll do a final Q&A because that is like the sale is almost done by then. So you won't want to miss out on that. It's great. And yeah, I think that's it. The Bookshelf app, the Build an Epic React app is really, my goodness, it's so awesome. So many training things that I've seen on the internet about React are like, here's this super duper contrived thing, or here's this super duper like busy work, because there's you have to learn the domain before you can actually learn the thing, and so it's really confusing. This gives you the best of both worlds. It lets you learn something in isolation with material that I've solidified over giving this stuff to thousands of developers, and then here's this like real world app that you can build and work on and expand based on all the things that you learned in the contrived thing. So you can see how things work in a real world scenario. So I'm really happy about that. Okay, cool. So that was fun. Thanks everybody. We will see you in the future, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.